good buddy and friend is a partner in that part of the company, and we started what we're calling Sugar School Coffee. We're also he's trained, he's got a lot more professional experience in the coffee world than I do, but I've been obsessed with coffee for quite some time when we finally got like a roaster that allows us to roast coffee properly.
Dive
And now
into it.
we just took a class with someone that's considered to be like, the best in the business. So he's doing it's like kind of like a class that came with some consulting and stuff like that. So our coffee game is going up and up and up. So
You
yeah.
guys are getting dialed in.
Yeah, we're trying to at least. So
That's
yeah.
cool. Was he in the coffee world before you guys linked up, or he
My
just
bud,
enjoyed it?
I met him because he was running. Someone introduced me to him. His name is Sean. I met him when there for a quick moment there was like a coffee club that opened up in Blue Lake that was overtaken by others. But initially, him and a friend kind of started it to kind of have a hub for people to meet, and then he was pouring not coffee that he roasted, but like coffees that he'd procure and share. And believe it or not, the large majority of people that drink coffee just want like more typical roasted coffee. So it kind of shifted away from that. But that's where I met him, and slowly he would stop by in the morning and we'd drink coffee, and then we became friendly, and then it just grew into something else, and eventually we started our little company. So
That's cool. People can go deep with coffee. Once you go into the rabbit hole, it starts.
oh, it's
It never ends.
well, I don't know it's super ton, but basically, there's so many flavors in wine. Apparently, the amount of like flavor notes you can find in coffee is far more than in wine, and then they've only just started really like digging into the science of coffee roasting recently. So how it all works and how heat affect it's very very I say bread's easy now because I've been doing it for a couple decades and it's complex too, but coffee's like you have to kind of learn like thermodynamics of how heat works and how heat transfer. It's like crazy. Even with bread, there's like some bread bakers out in the world that get real deep into the like this super sciencey side of things, which is cool. I'm kind of somewhere like I bet a lot of people would say I'm pretty sciencey, but compared to some of these dudes that are like, I'm like, dude, I didn't take enough science classes to really even get all the way there. Plus, you don't need to know all that stuff to make a good product. So, but coffee is super sciencey. So hopefully we find some of that science and it falls
Nice
back. Yeah,
balance.
something like
I
that.
had a. I don't know if you know John Salmon. He's that Harbor Coffee and Wine up the street
Yep.
there.
Sean works there right now as a barista.
Oh, really?
I don't know if I'm supposed to share that.
They're shout out to
Yeah,
John. They are super technical about their coffee. The
exactly.
third wave coffee is what
And
he
they're
was calling it.
carrying I haven't been to every coffee shop in the whole county, but I would say they're carrying at least one of the best coffees that you could have brewed for you anywhere around here. The Theory coffee is pretty good out of Reading. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're serious about it.
And
A
they're
lot of people once you move past the frappuccinos and the
yeah.
Starbucks, it's just it never ends. You just keep going deeper.
It's for some people and not for others, but those people that like get into it usually kind of like they get real like it happened to me when I was like, I mean, I got into coffee because a friend gave me a French press. I've always liked drinking coffee, but it was more about like give me coffee, I'll add the sugar and cream till it tastes good. We get high on caffeine and then we have a good, we crank through the day, whatever it might be. But when I moved here, a buddy gave me a French press and kind of showed me how he brewed and a whole like, I was like, oh, you could, because I already baked and I understood that there's recipes and there's technique to baking. I was like, there's technique to brewing a pot of coffee that most people have, considering how many people drink coffee and how many people will just brew it. How few people know they know nothing about what coffee even is. And
That's
then
me.
so
That's where I'm at. I'm a Folgers kind of
coffee is
guy.
the seed of a coffee cherry that is dried a variety of different ways, and then they remove the parchment, and then once it gets to a certain point, it's shipped out and roasted using hot drum roasters and stuff like that to a degree where we can drink it basically. But it's a seed of a little fruit basically. There's so much to it, but yeah, most people don't know. They just drink it, which is, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, as long as
So
you get your caffeine in the morning, right?
as long as you're happy,
Caffeine or your bread, which I mean, you're crushing it in the bread game.
I sell bread and make bread. Yeah, yeah. Have you had my bread?
I haven't tried it, but dude, the pictures that I've seen look incredible.
All
Andy
right.
and I were over here a couple days ago just scrolling through your Instagram,
Okay.
looking at everything.
I will make sure that you physically get to
Yeah.
get in there and super critique it soon. If I can find you, I'll find you after the next bake and bring you a bag of goodies. So
How long have you been doing that?
the cottage bakery that I have
Yeah,
right
that you
now,
have right now.
legally it was like signed up. I think this is like the end of the 6th year of me doing it. So it was 2000, like the end of 2015 when I got like the licensing, and I guess it kind of really started in the beginning of 2016. I was still working at it, like sort of began when I was working at the Lolita Bakery as the manager, and I was getting bored with what we are doing. And so on my Friday nights, which were strangely Friday nights, I'd create my own little dough to take home with me and then manipulate, then put in the fridge to proof overnight. And then in the morning, I kind of built like using a regular old home oven. I bought thick stones and I made a little tray with tea towels that I'd soak so they'd create steam, and then another one with lava rock so I could pour a bucket of water in it right when anyway, I'd spend copious amount of hours baking like 12 loaves of bread to bring to the Arcata Farmers Market. And then I tried like bartering. All I really wanted to do is basically like make bread. I mean, at Lolita Bakery, we make great bread, but it was it was all yeasted and fast. And I was really, at that point, I was getting into like sourdough cultures and really making like nicer bread. And that just, it wasn't happening there. There was no space for it there. The things that the owners and others wanted there were different than what I was trying. Yeah, I guess I got to a point where I wanted to do my thing a little bit more than ever. So that started. Lolita Bakery eventually fell apart. I was doing that pretty regularly, so I kept going with it, met a couple other people, and all of a sudden that's actually kind of what blew up into me saying, screw it, I'm going to borrow some money and start a bakery out of my home doing this little cottage thing. So, and it continues.
And it continues.
Yep, and it continues, and we've built a
You're
little coffee
expanding.
company into it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so right after the breadwork company in Lolita closed, that's when you started. You said, "Screw it, I'm going to go out on my own."
It was shortly after that that I kept doing what I was doing. No, I got my last job was like at another local restaurant in Arcata, and it slowly died. Either I seem to go to restaurants, and through my career, I either go to restaurants and bakeries when they open, and there's a common thing that happens if you're part of like the opening crew of a restaurant. No matter what happens, you probably won't make it because as they kind of figure things out, all those people that help build it somehow get pushed out, or maybe one of them makes it anyway. Or it's to when they die, one or the other. So I don't know what that says about me as far as a baker or a cook, but that's where I've lived in the. But I needed to be my own boss because I'm who I am, and I need to. Yeah, I went Lolita Bakery kind of gave me some false promises that maybe it would become mine, and then that quickly became a job where they wanted me to manage, which is not actually something that I'm like very trained in or interested in. I mean, I want to work with others that are good with me.
You don't want to have to train somebody and bring them up to your level.
I constantly talk with Sean saying, I don't want you to be my boss and I don't want to be your boss. I want to run a company together because with our ideals. Hopefully we could speak where both of our ideals can come through in the end, but I don't want you bossing, having to be my boss or vice versa. So
yeah, having employees can be challenging.
It's a different job.
Yeah.
I met a baker in Chico years ago. He's probably one of the best bakers that I've ever went to. Dave Miller Bakehouse out in Chico. He's the guy now. Right now, probably lots of bakeries mill their own flour in house, and he's been doing it for far longer than everyone. It's like he's been doing that for so long before it was trendy. But he was using an oven that I was interested in when I was working on other projects. So I went and finally met him, and his bread's stellar. And we had a conversation. He had a bakery in San Diego. Heard this baker passed away up in Chico that had like a full-on French bakery with all the French tools. So he bought it, moved up there. The people that started, I believe, Chad and his wife from Tartine Bakery ended up working with who are now famous and do the whole Tartine thing. I think they went and worked with Dave to kind of keep this bakery going. And eventually Dave decided he'd just take all the equipment, bring it to his property not far from Chico and just bake from home. And when I talked to him, he was only baking once a week. A lot of bread, let it be known. He went to do the Chico Farmers Market. And then I said, so you're retiring? What are you doing? He basically said he left that because he didn't want to be a boss anymore. And he wanted to be a baker. So that's always kind of like that line that he told me kind of always stuck in my head that I want to be a baker and not a boss. And he found that when he owned the bakery with employees, he couldn't, you can't just do both. It doesn't work. So
is that the same thing with being a chef? Because you're also running your kitchen where you have that dual nature of you're cooking, but you're also the boss in there.
I'm not as experienced in the savory culinary world, but I wish there were more like chefs that own their restaurants. But I'm sure that's still sort of like one of those battles of being the owner of a restaurant and cooking, because then, yeah, you have to think business and you have to think all this other side, but at the same time, you might be an artist with food, and then you got to make sure that it all
comes together.
Yeah, because you could be we've had restaurants that were too lucrative and too much towards someone's, wanting to amaze us, but then they fail because they weren't thinking about the business and they were the ones that were supposed to be thinking about the business. And or it could probably go the other way around too. So focusing too much on business and then the food falls off, which is seems to be Humboldt County, maybe not, maybe it's everywhere. I've just been here for 16 years, but restaurants start, they come out hard, things are good, and then all of a sudden they're not quite as good for, and then, you know,
Well, and how many just shut down because of COVID and never opened up again?
yeah, COVID messed up. I'm sure. I mean, we only see here, but COVID messed up the world of restaurants everywhere. I imagine, in some degree, it's probably good for some of them. Like we had all that hoity-toity food that we probably didn't really need, and a lot of those chefs have gone out on their own and taken their passion, and instead of being in some like fancy, kitchen trying to have accolades, they're making food they love and making a living for themselves, being their own boss. Maybe they're making burgers now, but I'll bet a lot of them are happier.
I get the sense that you're happier being your own boss, working how you're working now.
It is very, very challenging to work for a boss who tells you like how to cook and how to bake when they don't know how to do it, and all they really are is the financial backing towards everything, and then and that's super common.
Yeah, they're trying to teach you how to bake. Like, hey, you just focus on running
I,
the business. Let me do what I need to do.
and there's they're putting the money behind it. They have all the right in the world to say this is the way, like that's the fine example. We go back to Lolita Bakery, and me and my buddy, who were the guys that did the most of the bread, we were like trying to fix the Lolita Bakery, what we thought needed to be fixed. Everyone loved the Lolita Bakery sourdough, but we were trying to make it a more consistent bread. And one day we thought we nailed it. We thought we are like, oh, this will be the new sourdough for Lolita Bakery. Me and him were the only two people, not that it matters, but we were trained pastry chefs with plenty of years of bread baking, but we were the only two people in the entire bakery that preferred our new finish to the old inconsistent finish. So we yeah, it was one of those, okay. So
Does that happen a lot where you craft this almost perfect dish in your mind and then you present it to the public and they're like, we're gonna it's not gonna hit.
it happens sometimes it's not always that, but it's like with my bread now, like when I put out a list with like pan major and then maybe like a rye bread and then the focaccia, I get it. Everyone chases the focaccia because it's soft but it boggles I would, knowing what I know and what I love, I'm like, I'd be chasing the pan major or the rye breads, and then the focaccia would be the cookie to add to but we're all different. So
Is that how that's pronounced? Focaccia?
focaccia.
Focaccia.
Yeah.
I've been saying focaccia for my entire life.
Unless I'm wrong.
I I I would
could
bet
be.
I'm wrong. I would bet
And
I'm
when I
wrong,
spell
but
it, when I
nobody's
spell it
corrected me.
Foxacha, it's that was a customer's coined uh you know joke on my focaccia, adding the X in there. So, but it's actually FOC focaccia.
Focaccia.
It's classic Italian. It's kind of like part of like where pizza came from a little bit. So delicious.
And have you always been a bread maker? Is that because you went to the French Culinary Institute, right? Was that in pursuit of baking?
Yes, I have a degree in pastry arts. So I started baking on my own, I guess, in my first college. Challah was the first thing I made. So yeah, the first thing I made was bread. Um that became kind of a hobby because I had once you have your first like kitchen in an off-campus like apartment, you're like, oh, look at this, I can make a mess. So I started, I'd make challah, and then all of a sudden I'd make like two loaves of challah, and before they were even warm, me and my friends would have like completely devoured. But it was like there's something fun about it to me. So over the years, I got deeper into like teaching myself baking, and then when I finished that college with a liberal arts degree, I was gonna go for a computer degree, but I traveled the country that summer, and that's when I found Humboldt on the internet.
That's the road trip that you took.
Yeah, the crazy road trip I took, and in Colorado, I was visiting a friend who had just moved out there and found HSU on the internet, and I was like, Redwood Forest, really good weed. I mean, that's like
Sold.
yeah, exactly, yes, and get the hell away from New York. Let's go. So I pretty much went home, applied to HSU, got did the things, and as soon as I could, I headed out here. But when I headed out here, I had a lot of fun. Kind of didn't bother doing the school thing, and so I had to go back home after a year, which is fine. I was 20, but as soon as I went back home, I said, "All right, school, let's take a pause. I'm gonna get a job in a bakery because I continued baking while I was out here. One of my housemates was a chef, so we cooked together. So it became more and more of something that I knew I wanted to do. And even though my dad's like was a computer guy and stuff like that, I always didn't think that, but they were totally behind me chasing a food career. So I got a job in a bakery, which turned into a job at a different bakery. I read books and taught myself and baked at home, and eventually decided I needed to go to culinary school. And so I went to the French Culinary Institute for a year and got a degree in classic pastry arts. And like literally like 5 days after I finished, I was driving back here to live because the whole plan after I left here was to come back and open a bakery. Just took me a little while. Still haven't quite. I mean, I guess if you call what I have now a bakery, I've fulfilled my promise to myself, but maybe we can get it a little bit bigger soon enough here.
Yeah, you
So
don't have to stop building, right? That's part of the fun, is just keep
mm,
expanding.
yeah, I was for years trying to like build, people to back me so I can get into a brick and mortar thing, but now I kind of want to see if I can find people to help me where I could buy a commercial residential home in Arcata that I could expand into and still keep it. I feel like that would still, and otherwise I'll become a boss, but if I could keep it that way, I could hire some help and I could still kind of be like Josh Fox bread, where there's a couple days where there's bread, then I could actually do pizza and sandwiches and all the pastry stuff that I'm not allowed to sell right now because I can only sell stuff that's like shelf stable with the cottage law. So then custards and everything, become fair game again. So I can make cake, but I could do it cool and randomly where I could just be like, well, I'm gonna make some chocolate mousse cakes, and I'm going to tell everyone tonight on Instagram that tomorrow I'll have some chocolate mousse cakes, and then just kind of like, just like with my bread, kind of organically see what the people want, but not be your traditional bakery where I don't want to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 is never going to be part of how I set it up.
Well, it's a hard battle in the sense that you wanna maintain the quality and the integrity of the food. You don't wanna get so big that now your quality just isn't there anymore, right?
Yeah,
Is that kind of a balance for you of like, "I wanna expand, I wanna bring people in, but I
I,
don't want it to get to that point where it is just another bakery."
because they won't make the bread the same way that I mean, it's very challenging to train a crew to make bread the way that you know
Up to your standards.
I mean, I could probably I feel like I'd be able to find an assistant that could work with me, and then I take the load off, and then, there's the right person. There are people that bake bread better than me. There's no doubt about it. But like, I'm trying to get what I want in the end. And no matter how much someone tries to emulate what you're doing, it's not always exactly the same. Plus, if they aren't trained or don't have the skill sets, it's very hard to give someone 20 years of experience overnight. So either you can have someone that just helps or you got to go find skill that we don't have tons of up here because we don't have a whole lot to offer people that are looking for work really. So a lot of people will get the that have these skills will end up going towards a city where there's just more opportunity. So
That's the big thing with Humboldt is what is there really here for people to do? Especially kids that go to HSU, they're gonna leave because what are
there's
they
no
gonna stick
work
around for?
or
Yeah.
and there's no competitive work to boot. Like if you go get a job, if I went and got a job in a bakery around here, I'd make I'd get offered maybe a dollar, two, maybe $2 more than someone that had no skill and was, much younger than me.
And you've got all that experience to back.
Which I kind of understand that you can only make so much money off of the product, but it's like you get paid nothing for knowing what for being, I don't know, what you would hope would be a stronger piece of the puzzle, but they might not, certain places don't need someone to be that good, right? They just need the cogs to move.
Is it pretty competitive in the sense that going to culinary school doesn't really add that much? So you could still compete with some guy fresh out of high school or something trying to get a job at a bakery?
That's why I tell people that want to go to culinary school to really consider what they're doing because it's expensive. So if you're going to do it, make sure you want to be in the industry or you'd be wasting. And there's so much information from just going to a kitchen and saying, "Well, can I work for you?" You could pay, I'll dishwash and then or whatever it is. Strangely, that's how I mean, my first bakery job was when I got that first bakery job. I went down into Peekskill and I met this dude Herman, and he wanted, I responded to an ad, but I had no experience. So once he realized how like I really had no experience, I could tell on his face he didn't want to hire me because he wanted someone that would take the load off. But when I hung out with him and he saw I was young and I was,
Hungry.
into it, and he was 15 years older and he probably understood the feeling. And then when I watched him, he made rugelach that day in front of me. I'd never had rugelach before in my life, but I went home, even though this has got to be like 2000 or something like that. So the internet's not, it's not what it is now, but there was all recipes. And so I jump on and I look up rugelach recipes. I ask my parents, they're Jewish, like they knew what rugelach was. So I look up a recipe, kind of took it, went, made it the next day. I went back and saw Herman and I brought him my box of rugelach. He hired me on the spot. because it came out pretty good. It wasn't like perfect. He's like, it's not as good as mine, but but he was like, you went home and made rugla. I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, I'll teach you. And so that was my first job baking, and it was like a wholesale. You know, we were making lots of simple stuff, cookies and pound cakes and all that stuff, but in like these amounts that were kind of like crazy to me. But I learned a whole bunch there, had a lot of fun.
And for
So
a first job, and the way you got that is that's kind of what everybody wants, right? You put in a little extra work, you go made your bread outside of it and brought it back to him.
yeah,
You got the job.
I've got a couple jobs like that. Back when I started, before I was schooled, I'd go another bakery job. I was like, all right, I'll go home. I went home, and at that point, I had kind of like learned how to make some stuff. I was like, all right, I'll make them a babka, and I brought them the few things that I knew what I was doing. And again, I got hired pretty much on the spot when I handed them the plate of what I knew how to make. So I was like, okay,
Do
cool.
you think that's partly because it was you showing effort or because you were pretty good,
I think
even
with
though it was a little
Herman, he was
raw?
probably a little bit like maybe they're not the best, but he saw me, he went home, and he came back with a finished product that's pretty good. He's probably some It's surprising how many people can't follow a recipe. I don't know if you're good at cooking or not, but there are some people that
I wouldn't say I'm good.
some people are like to a degree where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but people say it's my, Virgo mind, but I love organization and order where some people probably don't. So maybe they both saw, well, I'm sure the second people saw he knows how to make a few things. We need a baker. And he's nice enough. He went out of his way. He got us, he brought us back pastries, so they hired me. That worked out for a while. And then but the first person, I think I impressed Herman by just doing what I did. And he saw how much I wanted it that he changed his mind. So I could be convincing.
Do you think that so going back to the culinary school,
Sure.
do you believe that you need that today? Where I mean, there's so much information online.
There is, but it's like I'm sure there's probably ones online that are organized in a way that maybe you could do it for like so much less money to get like the cool thing that happened in culinary school was you like literally like the class was 6 hours. You got in, you got like hands-on demos from chefs that knew what they were doing, and they showed you, and then you had to do it. And they had the best ingredients and every tool and everything under the sun that you could possibly need. So there's pluses and minuses to it, but it's like you don't get paid well well. You usually don't make much money, especially straight out of culinary school, and the amount of money that it costs to go to culinary school is quite a bit of money.
What does it
Usually,
cost?
French culinary student, I think they changed their name and now they're called something else, and they've expanded. But at the time, I believe it was like a $35,000 program or something like
Oh,
that.
damn, so comparable to going to a
Yeah,
4 year.
in 9 months, and you don't get a degree; you get a certificate. I asked them, but when I was like thinking about whether I should do it or not, and I asked the guy in the office, I was like, why wouldn't I just keep doing what I'm doing? Like learn, which maybe I could have, but he's like, if you go to Humboldt where there's so few people, you will have the best resume always. Or at least you will have this leg up on your resume forever because you went to this like prestigious school. And maybe when I was younger that was true. I feel like maybe at this point it would matter less because I have so much experience, but it gave me a really good foundation of like knowledge that I didn't have from just like opening books and jumping all over the place. And they made you focus. It's like, all right, we're doing cakes. And it was, X amount of times just doing all the different classic cakes, all the different combinations. So they're really giving you like the building blocks to get you still get out of culinary school and basically need to go refine your whatever it is you want, whatever focus point you want to do in baking. But they've given you this at least sample so you could say I hated working with chocolate or I loved working with chocolate or whatever it might have been that, because some of these people that were in my class never did it before and were like, and I had been baking for a little while, but some of them you saw pure natural talent, just like, whoa, they're very good at like particularly with cakes. I'm a terrible cake decorator. I'll build your cake layers, I'll make your fillings, and if you want me to make you a simple thing that I put together, I could do it. But as far as making extravagant, beautiful cakes, it's stressful. It's not my thing. But some of these people were just so natural. It was just like right up their wheelhouse. And that's like you get buku bucks for wedding cakes and stuff like that. So
Was that big business? Wedding cakes?
oh yeah.
I didn't think
The
about
nicer
that.
you do that, they pay by they're paying by the slice and stuff like that. So if you're good,
Jeez.
but it's so for me, I mean, I have friends that do it. For me, it's so to have a wedding cake on the line would still stress me. Like to have a birthday cake on the line for 12 would stress me out. So like to have a 300 slice wedding cake that you don't want to fall and everything, yeah, too much. Nope,
That's a lot of
I'll,
pressure.
I'll make your bread.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to have to do, especially somebody's wedding cake. Because then
Yeah,
if you mess that
it's the
up,
day, yeah. Then what do you?
it's
Yeah.
not gonna end well.
Nope.
It's really an art form,
Oh yeah.
baking, and just cooking in general.
Oh,
It's an artistic form of expression, I guess you could say.
indeed. You're tasting. I always say like the reason people will go to like a super high end chef's place in the long run would be because he's proven that people love his palate, the things he's doing, and that he finds that are delicious and feel and taste good together. Other people want to taste what that person thinks tastes good because obviously his palate is finding good things. So
Now with your bread, is it are you trying to get it structured to the point where it's repeatable, where every piece of bread tastes the same, or do you have a loose structure and then you just kind of fill it out as you're baking each batch?
well, I have a plan. I mean, it's totally organic. A lot of my breads are sourdough culture, so you know every day is going to be slightly different. But my pain majeur, I'm hoping, is kind of like pretty much essentially the same loaf each time I make it. That not it can't be exactly the same, but I'm trying to keep it what it is throughout the time. That's why some of my breads I make more often, but some of them that I don't make a lot, I could go 6 months or a year without making a type, and I have to kind of remember. And I can always remember enough to like make a loaf of bread, but to get it like dialed in usually takes a few runs. I have yeah, count my buddy from New York came to visit, and he's like, "How many different breads do you make?" So I counted my spreadsheets, and I don't make them all on a regular basis, but if I counted them all, it was like 80 some odd different breads. So a
That's a
whole
pretty good amount.
and a whole bunch of them. If you like look at my option number one is a sourdough loaf with just a different variation of flour mixture, basically. So I'm either focused like with if it's the spelt country bread or the Coruscant country, the main difference is just I'm putting a portion of spelt into one of them or a portion of Coruscant, and I'm focusing on that grain's flavor in a country style sourdough loaf of bread. And so I have probably 12 different,
Variations of
sourdough
that.
loaves that are just basically variations of the flour that I want to show off in the loaf of bread. So
Is that is that what makes or breaks a bread? Is a good flour base? Or what's like the key? I don't know anything about making bread, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like during COVID, that became a really popular
yeah,
thing. Everybody was
sourdough,
making
dude.
sourdough bread. I almost got into that
Almost.
bandwagon. Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people the most important thing, or at least serious bakers, the most important thing when it comes to sourdough baking is having a healthy culture. Because an unhealthy culture will raise bread, but then you'll have issues and it'll have different tastes. You could, and how you feed your starter and what you feed your starter and the temperature you keep it will promote different qualities. Like that bread that I was trying to fix in Lolita Bakery, because we did certain things that were maybe like, I guess you could call them wrong. It was a super sour sourdough bread, which I actually don't care for, but a lot of people strangely like seek it in this world because I guess in San Francisco, like the classic San Francisco sourdough is quite tangy. I didn't grow up with it, but and a lot of the stuff that you find nowadays a lot of the stuff that you'll find now that is that old style of San Francisco sourdough seems to be more like plastic baggy type of stuff. So I don't even know if it's like what it once was long ago when bakers were actually doing the
Making it.
work. But even like my other buddy that bakes around here, he wants a more sour sourdough loaf. They're into the tang. I'm kind of into the balance of cultured flavor, but the deep sweetness coming from using the culture to break down all the sugar that's in the flour and getting that balance. And then as you can see, I'm a crust guy, so I want crust, not blonde, not squishy, crust, crunch, and yeah, that's me.
And do you keep your starter just going, right? That's the thing where you just maintain the starter for
It's
however many years you wanna keep it alive?
You can keep it going forever. How old it is a myth as to how good your starter is because once you build a starter, if you were to start from scratch, basically all it is a mix of flour and water. Eventually, there's bacteria and yeast all that start doing their thing. The dominant ones, if you continue to like feed it properly, the dominant yeast will win. The dominant bacteria will find its home and they'll propagate. Usually, it takes about 2 weeks to get to like a stable, good, healthy sourdough culture if you follow these basic rules. Temperature changes the timing of it all. Assuming you're going with typical room temperatures. Then once it's stable, every day that you have it, even if you keep feeding it perfectly, the balance of bacteria and yeast will continue to like shift. And in some ways, that balance right there, when it's just become like a healthy starter after maybe 2 to 4 weeks, and it's like it's prime. It's the amount of bacteria to yeast, so it won't be super sour. But then some people will put their sourdoughs into their fridge, then the yeast eventually kind of like goes to sleep and dies, and the bacteria takes over. So the next time you take it out, you take a piece and feed it, and it'll have stuff in it. You could bring it back, but the balance of the culture will be so different. Multiple feedings will help bring it sort of back, but you'll once it changes, it kind of never. It's very hard to bring it back to that perfect balance that you're looking for. So regular feedings at room temperature will kind of do the best to keep it sweet and in good health, essentially.
And that's how you can change if it's more sour or not, is that bacteria yeast
And
ratio
temperature, the
and
well,
temperature.
that sour I'm talking about is almost like some people might retard their culture to get it intentionally, but the sour that I'm talking about, if you want a good sour, you'd control it with like heat. Um,
Heat while you're baking it?
the dough,
Okay.
no, what like the actual holding the dough at like apparent like that San Francisco recipe I talk about. So the breads I'll make, I'll mix the dough with culture in it, and I'll let it sit for a few hours at room temperature, kind of around 80 degrees or so, which is if you look at a chart that shows like the growth of lactobacillus bacteria. I know we're getting dirty now, and then the yeast at the same time. Around 80 degrees Fahrenheit is where they'll kind of cross a point where they're reproducing at the same rate. So a lot of us like that as like a dough point to build cultured flavor and also get the yeast going. If you exceed that though, you'd think, the yeast gets higher and higher and the bacteria does, but a few degrees later the yeast dies off, but the bacteria continues to propagate at a higher level. So what I read was that old San Francisco sourdough, they made the dough and brought it out at like that 90 some odd degree, really, really warm, so that the bacteria was multiplying at a much faster rate than the yeast. So before the dough is ready to be shaped, you produce that much more acid in the dough, which is why you'd get more of a tang, essentially.
Okay.
So
It's a
that's
science.
one way to manipulate a dough towards more of a tang or less of a tang. Yeah. So
Do you maintain your starter, or do you like to start you maintain it?
yeah, I have a wheat starter and a rye starter that I pretty much, if I'm not baking, I feed them once a day. If I'm baking, I feed them twice a day. They're like, this much, 100 grams of each that I just keep. A lot of people don't like to throw away the discard. That's part of the reason they prefer to put it in the fridge so that there's less waste. Just what it is.
And when you say it's funny hearing you say feed it because you're feeding the bacteria. Are you just adding in more flour? That's what you're feeding it with?
If I
Or
take
water?
like 3 grams this morning, I took 3 grams of my wheat starter and then I took the other 100 grams of starter and threw in the garbage. And I left 3 grams in there and I added some water. And then I added I feed it a little white and wheat flour, and then I mixed it up into a dough ball that's 100 grams again, and it was like it's a firm. I do a firm starter instead of a liquid starter, so it'll look like a piece of firm dough, and then that'll sit for 12 hours and rise again, and then I could just keep doing that, and then when it's like dough day, I could take that little bit, and instead of throwing that bit out in the morning, I'll propagate it and just feed the whole thing to make it 4 times as much. And then later that evening, when I have to do all the builds to feed the 100 and some odd loaves of bread, I'll build that into further. And then once I'm done, I can go back to keeping just a little piece again.
And you do that just with the sourdough and the wheat, your
Well, and
starters?
any of the breads that I write naturally leavened on the bottom, that's my way of saying it's sourdough, because sourdough kind of has like its own. Sourdough is a type of bread to some people in this world, and so it's almost speaking. I don't want to. So many of my breads are made sourdough, so I call it naturally leavened if I write it down. So any of my breads where it says naturally leavened, it means I'm using just culture, no commercial yeast to do all of the leavening.
Huh.
And then I use commercial. I'm not against commercial yeast. It's in some
Okay,
of my
that's what I was
breads.
gonna ask.
The other
Is that
breads, a lot of the breads that I have commercial yeast in, though, I'll have both.
a
So I'll use
mix?
culture and a little bit of yeast, but I like the lightness and the predictability of adding the yeast, and it's less sour.
Can you tell a difference in the taste if you use a commercial? You can.
Oh yeah, I think so. You could tell like a focaccia. I mean, you could do really. It's much harder to make naturally leavened or sourdough things that are as light as a yeasted thing, unless you're like you need. That's when you get to that like. Have you ever had panettone?
I don't think so.
I won't say the name of the person that the company that does it because I don't really want to.
Start some shit.
No, I just no. They're amazing at what they do. I just don't want to. I don't want to advertise for them. They're a very giant company at this point, so I don't want to share.
Oh,
But
so they don't need it.
no, they don't need it. But it's super expensive. But it's a food, like I'd say in the past 10 years, it's one of the foods that I've had that has been the most mind blowing food to eat. Because most of the panettone, like go to Costco and they'll have like an $8 tin of like really dry, disgusting panettone, which is why most of us are like, "Well, I don't know what panettone is," right? But if you have the real stuff, they have something that they call massa madre, where they'll basically make this really firm starter. So a lot of us keep our starters where it's like equal weights, water and flour. So when they make the massa madre, it'll be half the amount of water to flour. So it's like super dry dough. And then they'll wrap it in a piece of cloth and then they'll tie it in a rope. And this is to, I think, avoid. I don't do this because there's so many complex moving parts to making panettone the right way. I don't have a laboratory. I don't want to get deeply invested into it, but I find it interesting. So that has to be fed like, I forget how many times, but at a certain temperature that's warm, and it will remove the acid from the starter basically, but give you a ton of cultured flavor and a ton of yeast to help raise a loaf of bread. And then it's a really, really like, there's tons of eggs. I know there's tons of eggs. I don't know if there's milk or cream in it, but there's tons of eggs and tons of butter. And then usually their classic inclusions are like candied fruit and raisins, but they could do it a million ways from Sunday. And then it'll go into like a paper liner that's like, round like this. And if the dough's down here, when it starts, it'll rise to like here before it even goes in the oven. And then it'll spring. So you end up with this piece of dough that like quadruples. And then when it comes out of the oven, it's so fragile that they hang them upside down while they cool. So that until it's complete, otherwise it'll just collapse. And then once it's cool, you can have it. And the way it eats is like when it's done right, and it's all sourdough. There's I mean, it can be made both ways, but when it's done the classic way, it's done with just sourdough that was manipulated perfectly, and there's not much else. If you like sweet stuff, there's not much else like it. It's pretty amazing.
I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you where to get.
We'll talk after. Yeah, we'll talk after.
I mean, I guess I don't want to plug him. Nope, can't do it.
But it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's better than pretty good. Yeah, usually.
Bread is just. I have a problem with bread. I can just go to town on a loaf of bread, even if it's just sourdough with some olive oil and balsamic vinegar. I'm gonna eat until they carry me out of there.
That means it's good bread.
Yeah, but even if it's crappy bread, you can get store bought
right.
sourdough, and I'm just gonna keep. If it's good bread, that's even worse.
Another level.
Yeah, because then you can't stop. And then
Yeah.
your food comes and you're like, I'll just have the bread. Just box this up for me.
My family's known from back in the day when they used to give you the bread basket on the table, asking for like annoying the waitresses because they'd come and be gone, and then come again and then be gone, and they'd be like, really, it'd be like 5 baskets later, we're finally good on the. And that's why there's no free bread baskets probably in most of the world anymore.
I would buy that. That's my family's the same way. Everywhere we go, Texas Roadhouse, where they have that cinnamon bread. Have you ever tried that?
I haven't.
It's like a cinnamon
And
bread, and then they have a cinnamon butter. Yeah,
Okay.
and they'll bring 5, and then we've gotten into trouble a couple times because we'll be eating our entrees, still ordering bread, and the waitress just disappeared. She's like, "We're not going back to this table.
Yeah,
you guys
I'm gonna
don't
leave
need
them
any more
alone."
bread. Yeah, eat your food, get out of here."
Sure.
But it's just good bread is it's on
the
another
staff of
level.
life, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's happiness.
I agree. I couldn't get off it if I needed to.
Yeah.
I want you to have my bread.
I'm gonna have to try it. Yeah, your pictures are insane. Do you attribute a lot of being able to do it kind of how you're doing it to like Instagram and social media? Because that's your big branding part, right? Is going through that medium.
Yeah, I'm totally not into like marketing and the typical routes of business, but Instagram's just been the way that I've been able. It just kind of happened. I didn't do it intentionally. It just sort of. I started sharing what I was doing on there while I did it. People showed a little interest, and it was a place to show, at least on Instagram, you could like hashtag Arcata this way. It's like maybe the locals will actually, because in the beginning when I started, it was like, how do I tell people I'm doing what I'm doing? And then like recently I was just in the Lost Coast Outpost, which is probably where you heard.
That's how we found you.
And I mean, I'm telling you, I've done this is the 6th year of me doing it out of my house, and I've been selling out for the better part of those years already. I'm busy since the Loco. But the Loco Outpost article definitely made it known that a lot of people did not know who I was, because there's a new influx of wonderful people interested in trying. So that's why I'd love to find the way to grow, because I cannot keep up. I could just do what I could do, and hopefully they'll, take turns getting what they can get. It's because there's no more room really. So,
but that's a good place to be in, where the demand is just so high. It's like, sorry guys, if you don't get bread,
it's
this
humbling.
week. Yeah.
Well, no, people say that, and I agree, but I have to say no so much, and
That's hard.
yeah, and even to like someone came the other day and they ordered, two Scotty's Italians, and I'm weird the way if you order a sourdough loaf and I have focaccia as another option, I mean, you could always ask for whatever you want. If someone else doesn't ask for it, you can have 25 loaves of bread, but I'm gonna spread the wealth, you know, to the best of my ability. So if you ask for 4 focaccia, the odds are just like your odds are slim because that's 10% of the focaccia that I'm probably making, and everyone else wants one. So, and if someone else that's buying a loaf of sourdough wants to add a focaccia to their, it would be sad to not give them a loaf of focaccia and let you have 3 of them. But anywho, some people struggle with how I like kind of they want what they want when they want it. And I totally can understand, and I don't have to wait in my line or do what I do for my product, but I can understand wanting what you want when you want it. So it's a hard place to be. It's cool that I sell out and everyone's interested, but I wish I could say yes to everyone and get everyone the things that they want. Because saying no, some people really struggle with hearing getting a no. Some
Yeah, a
people
lot of people
really
don't
struggle,
like
and
that.
then they're like, it's actually like sometimes like how they feel about who I am because they feel like I'm like
Gatekeeping your
they're
bread.
holding it against me that I just said I just don't have any more bread. I'm so sorry. It's booked out. There's nothing I could do about it. Or like I gave you one, but I couldn't give you two, and then you could feel the disappointment sometimes. So yeah,
Well, you're just one guy. I mean, like you said, if somebody's ordering 5 loaves of bread, and you're like, I got to spread the love to everybody that's trying to get some bread.
to the best of my ability. I mean, at some point, yeah. So that's the struggle of it all is that I want everyone to get what they want, and I really can't think of a better. I'm not going to change the way my business works right now because it works. So hopefully going forward, everyone can find a little bit of satisfaction. I had a regular customer like miss out recently because of this influx, and she was all. You could tell she was pretty disappointed, and I felt bad, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I'm booked like so solid that there's not a low for you. And she's like, is everyone else just ordering when you post your bird video? Is that what I'm supposed to do? And I'm like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. So she was like, and she hasn't ordered since. And she was, and I don't know if that ties together with why she's not ordering, but I'm pretty sure I lose customers because of it at the same time because they don't want to deal with it. Again, I get it. Totally fair,
But it sucks.
but it sucks because I want them to have
The
I
bread.
want to share. Not I don't even necessarily want their business. I want them to be able to have what it is they make because I make it because I want people to eat it. I want people to eat good food. There's nothing that'll make a sandwich better than better bread to build that sandwich on.
I
So
was reading some of the comments, I think, from that Lost Coast article, and people were in there upset that, great, now he's going to be sold out. We're not going to get
that's my
any bread.
regulars. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Which would, I mean, what are you going to do? It's good that you're getting out there. I mean, I'm sure you're appreciative of that.
I am.
And then, like you said, the customer aspect is, hey, I didn't get bread this week because you sold out. What the hell?
It's just a challenge. Hopefully,
Mellows out.
hopefully it mellows out. Plus, right now I'm like usually I'd bake 1.5 times. Usually I'd bake like every other Tuesday, but I'm just trying to keep up with Stolen right now. It's they're just buying it fast. They're just buying it so much faster that I'm making my Tuesdays the day so I can make the Stollen. Whereas normally I just like squeeze one in. Plus I just don't have the time to. I used to be like, all right, I'll do that on the weekend, and then I'll go right into baking. And I've had friends and family be like, you need to take time for yourself and relax. So trying to not work too hard.
What is your current schedule? So you post what it's going to be on Tuesday, Thursdays, or orders.
So usually, if it's a regular week, usually how it works outside of Stolen season, like so during the regular year, usually my bake days are Tuesday and Friday, and I'll post the day before each on Instagram and on Facebook. And then if you really don't do social networking, I offer a text message, but that'll come after I've posted on Instagram and Facebook. So
You might miss out.
and people do, and they're like, I just sent it right back. I'm like, yeah, but the note's been up for 30 minutes and it's gone. I don't know. I can't help. Anywho, but if they really don't want to do the social networking, that's fine. And I'll put them on my text list as long as they're going to be buying bread somewhat regularly. Because it's not an app. I do it, one person at a time, copy and paste. Because I used to use an app, and then too many of the text messages would fail. So it's just not worth doing, setting it all up only to have it not work. So I just copy and paste for 20 minutes while I'm waiting on dough and then get back to work. So, but anyway, so post what I'm baking bread-wise on Monday and Thursday. The pickups the following day between 4 and 6 p.m. at my house in Arcata. If you order, I'll tell you where I live, the few different ways that you can pay. When you pick up, I usually have like pastries or some sort of add-on goodies that you can add to your bread order. You can't come and get pastries and or the add-on things if you haven't ordered bread because there's not enough. It's for the people that have placed an order that, for that day. And then now that there's sugar school coffee, there's often some fresh roasted coffee as well. And then you
which is a great combo. Get your
everything.
bread, grab
Yeah.
some coffee.
Yep. So if I get to this little commercial residential place, part of it would be to put the roastery in there, maybe a little espresso bar, but it would be like a slow bar, so it wouldn't be open. Just like everything else I said, it wouldn't be a like you wouldn't go there 5 days a week. It might be open a couple days a week, and it would be to showcase some of the coffees we have going at the time. So
And how many loaves of bread are you doing on a typical bake day?
it used to be 80 to 100 on each, but since I'm not doing the Tuesdays, I've been doing the like, big batch of Stolen, and I've been pushing my Friday bake to like the most I've ever about 150 loaves lately. I've been doing
That's a
just on
lot of
Fridays.
bread.
Yeah.
That's a lot of bread.
1/6 of the leading bakery in the area does it a day with a full staff,
Really?
or at least when I used to work for some leading bakery in the
Is
area.
your biggest hang up equipment, like having a bigger oven or a bigger fridge?
Time, space, hands. I have a very small. I mean, my home is small too, but like, I'd need if I wanted to do more bread, I'd need another oven, which I could get, but there's so little space in my house. I kind of promised myself we don't add another oven until we have a like better venue to have another oven at. So I've been kind of like, I was really close to like making the move pre-pandemic. I'm glad the one thing that almost happened didn't happen. But and then the pandemic had me just basically I didn't know what was gonna happen, but I got busier because of the pandemic. So I just stuck with what I did. I thought my business was gonna kind of like semi fall apart because I didn't know how people would respond, but it actually made more people come. So
Well, it worked out for you because you didn't have this physical restaurant style place where you
which
would be
is
shut down.
which I did that, and people were stoked to not have to go into a building with a bunch of other people and stop at someone's home, which was outside. At the worst, you're on a line with people in the outdoors. Um, for a moment, like as soon as it happened, I had to like because people used to come and actually walk into my house, and I'd set all the pastries up on my counter, and the bread would be on the rack, and they'd come in and but as soon as the pandemic happened, I was like, all right, we got to make a change, and I put a board up, and I was like, I'm gonna bring your bread to you and tell you what I have, and I'm never going back. We'll just keep it that way where they can come outside,
Yeah,
and
it's better than having
ev-
people come into your house.
and little did I know, but now I'm like, oh yeah, I'd much rather not have every single person that's coming to pick up bread come inside anymore. Not that I don't want them to see the bakery, but it was, I was like, oh, it's better on the traffic through my home. So yeah, so
Do you like that split where you live
yes,
in your business basically?
I just wish I had a bigger home, but I mean, that's
You want
kind
to
of
keep it that style. That would be the mixed use thing of where you could still live there and work there.
otherwise, if I go start a business that I own, I'm going to end up spending 60 to 80 hours a week in a different space while I have a home over here. And if my dog can't be where I'm working, then my dog with it, like everything about life would work out better if I could live right next door to where I baked. And at the same time, that would make it so I could hire less people because if I'm right next door and there's like little tasks that need to be done, I go home, do some stuff, come back and do it instead of needing someone to like be there to do things for. I'll just go do them, you
Yeah,
know.
you're not 30 minutes away. You got to
I
commute.
just go in and out, and then like I could run in there and be like, I'm gonna go bust out some pie dough because we got to do this thing, but then I could go back and live my life, and then yeah, definitely love. Little did I know how much I love being with my bakery, but yeah, definitely want to continue that. Whether it be like a huge house that has a place that could be a bakery or a storefront that has a living space that's above. One way or the other, though, that's the new dream. So
Is it hard to maintain a balance with that where you do live in your business of
yeah,
trying
I,
to
I live in a
keep a personal
bakery.
life? Yeah.
No, I mean I have a person. Well, I'm happy with my life, but there's definitely I feel like maybe I would enjoy it if I had more space and the bakery was a little bit. When I walk into my kitchen, I'm in the bakery, like 10 feet, which is 10 feet out of. I live in a mother-in-law unit, so it's a small spot. So I walk out of my bedroom, I walk out, and boom,
You're at work.
kind of, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But yes, it would be cool if like maybe it was like in the garage, and then like I can actually have my personal home kitchen that doesn't scream you're already at work, which could be like a little bit of a more of a. I mean, I love my kitchen. I sit there and have coffee, but it might be a little bit more pleasant to me as like a for my personal space, I suppose. I don't know, I've been doing this for so long. I'm just used to it.
Yeah, yeah, 6 years. I mean, you're in it.
I live
You're
in it.
in it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a ball of flour.
It's not a bad thing to be.
Nope.
Yeah. I like that. I like that structure because I'm basically here 24/7 as well.
Doing the
So it's
same.
just yeah, it's just easier than having to go somewhere to go to work because you're right there.
It's inefficient.
Yeah.
That came out of the pandemic too. Look at all the people that are like, I didn't need to go. Even wealthy people, like, what were we doing driving to an office?
Yeah, and how many
We're
people
so
don't wanna go
digital,
back to
and
that now?
nobody does. And I bet the same thing as some of those chefs too that realized they were on the line, but they could have been, even though they might not be making the fanciest dishes that are being coveted by wealthy people and getting the praise, they might be stoked making smash burgers for themselves that people love in their community, and they get to work for themselves, you know, and maybe hire their friend and not be under some like chef that or person that has nothing to do with the kitchen that just tells you what to do. I assume there's a lot of that going on.
And not have to work that standard 9 to 5 of you have to be here
Oh,
at
you're
this time.
if you're a chef or a cook, you're always working. You're married
That's
to it.
the big thing, right? Is you're working long hours
You gotta love it.
constantly.
It's just got to be what you. It's got to be what you want to be, not just what you want to like do for a living. It's got to be what you want to be, and if it doesn't, maybe that's true in all professions. But if it doesn't, you might want to do something else and make it a hobby and enjoy it. Because if you just want it to be the hobby, getting into the work is not the same thing. The different type of
It's all
it's different.
consuming. You gotta give it everything.
Or at least I do. There's different personalities and I found that, but I find this with other people. It consumes us. It's just like, yeah, I have a good buddy that works at local. He's worked at a couple local places, and when I'm like, just do what they tell you to do. They don't pay. I'm like, they don't pay you enough to like just design these things for him. He's like, yeah, but it's so hard to not do something better, and I can totally relate to how he feels, and I feel like that's how a lot of chefs feel. Even when they're like, you should be paying me more, they'll still go do that next level thing because they fucking love what they're doing. Pardon my French.
No, you can cuss on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you think that's just a passion drive that when you find the one thing that you really wanna do, you will give it what it
yes,
takes?
I think so. I mean, you're doing this because I'm imagining this is your passion,
It
right?
would suck if I didn't like this.
You
I
would be
mean, yeah, I would be
you'd be
I would
terrible, and
be
you'd have to be.
miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy interviewing and learning about people, and you set up your studio to have a studio. You didn't go rent a studio somewhere else. You made it happen. So I don't know. You find your deep passion. I think friend you when you remove your friends from your life to do what you love is like kind of a you know I can't remember. I keep seeing this video in my head where it's a guy, he's a chef. He's like, basically, I don't have any friends anymore because I basically took on this career and I've been doing this thing. And he's like, but it's what I do. He's like, and I'm not gonna. You could see that it was hurting, but at the same time, there was no way he would leave it. I've done the same. I don't know why we do it.
It's a double-edged sword
Yeah, a little bit.
because you find this thing that you love and it comes at such a cost, but you love it. So,
It's what makes you be. It makes you. I guess. So
and how do you not do that thing when you find it? How do you not?
I've had partners and friends in the past that were always so jealous of me, know that I knew they would always be so upset that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Once I found baking, I was like, no, no, no. I know bakers don't make money, but I'm going to go open a bakery. This is exactly what I want. And I've known I wanted to do this for quite some time. A bunch of them would be like sort of disappointed that I like, or not disappointed. They'd just be jealous. They're like, I don't know I'm like, well, go find a path. You got to find what you love, and then, do what you love and love what you do. Otherwise you'll be disappointed is my guess. Or maybe money will do it for you. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it's a weird the passion thing is so weird because some people don't want to sacrifice to even try to find one. They get into that shitty job or that 9 to 5 and it's just this realm of comfort
It's
where at least they
addictive.
know at least they know what's going to happen. I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to go to work.
And
I
if you
don't have
got
to worry about losing my job
and if you have a family
and a mortgage.
or, things that need to happen, or you're thinking about retiring and you're like, this is what I went to school for. This is what I should be doing. But it's like,
Do you like it?
but it's sucking my soul. Yeah, exactly. Like, but are you gaining? Because you don't live for the money that that will be in your bank account when you die. So like, what are you living your life for is the real. That's different for everyone, I guess. Some people want to be rich, or, some people's, the way people measure their success is different. I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. I just want to slowly grow it into this next thing, and I could see then I'd be pretty stoked. I don't think I'd need, hope maybe some projects here and there, but I'd be pretty stoked on what we had. I mean, my dream is like this space where there's my bakery, room for like a gluten-free bakery, room for a fishmonger, room for a butcher, room for a beer brewer, a coffee roaster, all in this big building where there's plenty of space for all these things. The center has an open space for a like ongoing farmers market for all the farmers from the nearby area to have a place to just not have to have these organized farmers markets, but a place where they can pay dues to this building that gives them access to just say, then they can jump on Instagram. Hey, I got a bunch of these veggies. Come on down to the market, and then one spot would be an open kitchen that could be for pop-ups that we could then like talk to chefs from in San Francisco and say, hey, you want to get away to a cool place and like work on new menu items? We rent our kitchen here. We can even set it up and organize it so there's a pop-up dinner. Just I know it's crazy, but
I
that's
think that'd
my
be sweet,
it's
especially
just
in
such a
Arcata.
huge like endeavor that it's not something I could do on my own. It would probably take so much money to actually put together, but it would be this culinary like powerhouse of a building that would be you'd have everything that could all work together. Everyone would be rubbing everyone's back. The bakery that would be there would, and then someone would go to the butcher right next door. You do all your stuff. You can stop going to the supermarket. I don't know. It's the
Well,
weird dream.
I mean, you're working towards that, right? You got the
We
coffee.
do
you
little
got one
parts of it.
step.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know if I want to be a butcher and all that stuff, but
You don't have to do it all
Yeah,
yourself.
I'll find someone else to do those other parts. Exactly. Find someone that's been doing like making really nice salamis and stuff for 25 years, and put them in there using some of our local meats and stuff like that, and we'd have a fun little spot. So
Why do you want to do that? That idea of helping everybody out in one spot. Is that just because you know how cutthroat the business can be, or
hmm, I don't know. I think it's just there's something beautiful about that idea to me, bringing like the craft end of all of it into like one space where eh, yeah, I don't know. There's just something. I love food. I like I think my favorite thing to do is eat, and maybe see like a fish show. So, but eating is definitely like my leading thing to do. So I feel like that would make for a better culinary playground in the area. 'Cause
but again, do we have anything like? I don't. We don't have anything like that.
I
We
don't
have
know of
some
anything
farmers
that even
markets.
exists like that, but like the ferry building and stuff like that. But that's even more bigger than what I'm thinking. I'm thinking something a little bit more focused, but yeah, they have all those different parts down there in the ferry building. So it came to me after someone talked to me about like starting a tea house that did like true like ritual tea settings. Like they got a couple, and there's one like in Boulder and one in New York. I was like, I don't think that would work around here, but I feel like this would work. And then if you wanted to have like a little tea room, that would actually work in that same space. So,
Well, I feel like the support for local business here is pretty strong,
oh yeah,
and local sourced food.
all of it. So I feel like it would be. I feel like if the hub, if this thing happened, I feel like it would be totally supported by the community, and people would be into all the different parts of it. So
Just building that out.
finding
That's the
someone
big
that believed
project.
in the same idea and someone that had the skill sets to say we could grow this together, and then put the businesses in place, and it'd be pretty cool. So, any-
And is the phase before that? That's where the pizza and those other pastries come in. That's what you're kind of leaning
I'd want
towards.
my new space to be the place that was basically like had all of that. So I'd probably, if I grew and it was the way that I see it right now, I'd probably continue baking bread a couple days a week. I'd probably be able to bake more. I would imagine I'd be able to, I'd have more oven, and I could probably do slightly more numbers. And then I might do like minimal bread on those other days that I was open, but I wouldn't do the full, line. Maybe the other days I would just do like dinner breads and stuff like that, focaccias and baguettes. But I think I'd have an open case of focaccia sandwiches that I did like on a regular basis. If one a baker in Italy that is an inspiration to probably all of us is Bonci, and the bar of, if you ever go watch videos of it, he's just got a bar of all these different like topped focaccia sandwich type things that I feel like something similar would be such a great place to go for lunch. And one day it might be, if it's tomato season, it might just be tomatoes and a little bit of basil, but then there might be some like nice cured meats on a different one. There might be eggplant, who knows, but all those, maybe a specialty sandwich, and then I'd probably bust out pizza nights. I'd imagine I'd do pizza at least a couple nights a week, but I don't know that I'd be like a regular pizzeria where it was like, okay, we do pizza between this hour and this hour. Come look at our case. Plus, I like making different styles of pizza. So one night it might be, yeah, we're doing pizza tonight. It's New York style, and then another night I'm going to do like like grandma pies, or I'm going to do Sicilian, even deep dish pies, and then just kind of change things up and hope that they're all still interested in eating whatever it is I am in the mood to make for them. I'm hoping that I can keep being good at what I do, that so if I just share, there'll be enough people that want to come and eat, basically.
Is that how you pick what breads you bake now, is just kinda what you're in the mood to cook?
Yeah, I go through like the list. There's sort of like a balance. Certain ones get handled in a certain way where I can only pick like X amount from this section and X amount from this selection, but then the mix needs to be like there needs to be a whole or grain bread, there needs to be a sourdough bread. Usually it's nice to have at least one rye bread. Sometimes a lot of people like square bread, so having one square, there's certain blend of it, but then within that I just kind of pick from my mix, but I'll have like a date of the last time I made it, so I'm kind of
Cycling
cycling
through.
through. There's if there was those 80 loaves, I'll bet like 30 of those 80 loaves I don't make often at all, and then the rest of them are kind of in this endless cycle throughout my kitchen, and then I always make new stuff, and then some of them I realize that I don't come back to, and I'm like, okay, I'll just leave you there. We'll do another one.
What's your most popular bread?
I think I'm most well reputable for the focaccia. Everyone speaks of my focaccia quite a bit. Um, my favorite breads are my sourdough breads, or I guess I said all of them are sourdough breads. I like my favorite bread is probably not my favorite, but one of my favorite breads is the Pain Major. Um, I always say it's like if I had a last, if I could have one loaf of bread for the rest of my life, that'd probably be the one I chose. But then, I like the focaccia and I love me a fresh baguette. They all have their
Their place.
they all have their yeah, like if I made you a sandwich on a baguette, it would be one thing, but if I made you a sandwich on a focaccia, it would be something else. And if I made you a sandwich on sourdough, it would be even something different. That's why I always say like your bread can make or break your sandwich. So
Now, are you pretty handy in a kitchen outside of baking? Like, can you cook pretty well?
I can cook. Some
Does that
people
skill translate? Like, if you can make bread, you could handle yourself in a kitchen?
usually if you get to the level where you're a good bread baker, you probably enjoy cooking and do enough of it where you've built some of the skill sets to cook. And I've always liked cooking, savory too. I probably, I started cooking savory food before I started baking, but I worked in one savory. I've worked in a couple of savory restaurants, but like before I moved out here, I went to my last job. I was working for a bar. I got really into like barbecue when it got real trendy back in when I was like finishing right before I went to culinary school. And it was a day where this guy he opened it. He was a Wall Street dude that decided to retire because he had many millions of dollars and he used to do pastry. So he bought the whole thing, built the barbecue restaurant, hired me to just do desserts. But within a few months, I was like the head chef ish. There wasn't really a head chef, but I was doing all the barbecue smoking. And the other guy that knew more than me was this guy, Philly. I'll never forget him, but he was in culinary school. So we knew that in a couple months he was going back to school. And when he left, I was like the one that pretty much knew how to do all this stuff. And I had never worked in a restaurant. And it was his fault that I decided to quit and go to culinary school because one day he like turned on me. He wanted me to be like deep into his business, but I don't think it was succeeding for him really well. And then at one point I think I said something that probably which I'm sure it was my fault, but got him the wrong way. And I could feel it. And he started cutting my hours. So I basically said, "What's the deal?" And he basically told me if I wanted a job, this is what he had. And he handed me a list to go do his like inventory. I was like, no, so I do all. And so, so I just left. And that was the day I decided to call up the culinary school and sign up for the program and say, all right, it's time to like make the next big plunge into the culinary world and be a pastry chef, really know what we're doing, and then move back to California and open a bakery. And I did, I guess. Or at least we could say I'm like
You're
four-fifths
there. I think
I'm
you did it.
four-fifths of the way there, right?
I think you did it. It's interesting how you have those little forks where you could have zigged and you zagged.
Oh yeah,
Or you
I
could
could
have
have
gone this
been
way and
deep
could have
in
gone that way.
who knows? I could have been deep into the, barbecue world. And the next thing you know is the rest of my dessert making for life is just making like desserts for a restaurant. And then, but more focused on because barbecue, I was into it because you can get real technical with how to smoke the meats and stuff like that. So that was cool too. It still is, but I
And
don't.
barbecue's great. Come on.
Yeah. Good barbecue is so
Yeah.
good. Oh, that was a fun job. Going into the pork butts coming out of the smoker and like being able to eat the bark off the fresh. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I like
I
food.
don't think I could cook. I would if I went and worked at a restaurant, I would easily be 500 pounds. I don't think I could get by
You end up not eating.
from just the workload.
You're just busy, but
I'd find a way to eat.
yeah,
I think I'd find a way to eat.
yeah. It's definitely not the healthiest um, not the healthiest job to have in the world. So
Well, unless you work at McDonald's, I think I would be fine working there. I don't think I really eat the food.
sadly, the McRib's back. I don't eat. I haven't had McDonald's in I don't know how long, probably 15 plus years. Don't eat fast food anymore. Humboldt changed me all the way, but like we had to try it. Let's go see what a McRib tastes. Let's go see what the McRib tastes like now. Man, McDonald's is not good. I hope you don't get it. McDonald's is something far worse than I knew in my mind. That I thought it was. I thought it was like terrible for us, but still sort of had that weird. This tastes good to it. It doesn't have any of the weird. It tastes good to it at all. It's just all.
Trash.
Or maybe I've just grown so far away from it. I feel like it's different, but maybe I'm just such a different person at this point that I mean, the last time I went home to New York, I went to like my childhood bakery to get my New York rye. I was like, I'll bring it back so people know what like I developed my New York rye with in mind. And I was like, when I took a slice of it, I was like, this is terrible. It doesn't remind me of what I ate as a kid, but is it what I ate as a kid? And I'm just like, I've gone past that. I'm not really sure. The bread could have changed, but yeah, that was a fun experience last week with McDonald's. So you don't need to go find out. You don't need to go look into it.
I don't
Nah.
think I've ever had the McRib. I'm definitely
I
not going to
loved
after
it.
talking about this.
I loved it.
I'm not going to
A
try
long
it.
time ago, the McRib was like, you don't remember the story of the McRat?
I know that it was huge, that people loved the McRib and then they
Yeah.
took it away.
And then it became like, the occasional, they busted out for what, 2 months a year, a month a year or something like that every year. But I've never been inclined to go try it recently. It just happened. We did it. And it was like, we took one bite. We both took one bite. And that was like, we did not eat anymore. And I watched someone else do a review on Instagram recently. They did this. They're like, nope. Oh no, someone did that with Costco pizza. That's what it was. Because they were doing like reviews on nice pizza. And they're like, everyone keeps asking me if I had Costco pizza. I was like, maybe it's California seems to like a lot of really, really bad pizza. So maybe it's a California thing.
I slipped into that. I went to school in New York for a little bit and there was this one pizza shop and the pizza wasn't good. But I kept ordering it. Like every few weeks I would order that pizza because it was bad, but there was
what
something
you
about
wanted.
it. Yeah. It's like, 2 a.m. on Saturday, you order
Yeah.
up this pizza. It sucks, but it's
There's
satisfying.
something smarter. Yeah.
Yeah, you get something out of that pizza. Even though
think
it's not good pizza.
Yeah, I think I find that more like a frozen pizza than I do some of the cheap. But there's everyone's got to find their own little guilty pleasures in life, right? So
So you lived in New York? Where in New York were you living?
I was born in a town called Yorktown, about an hour north of New York. Well, an hour north of like the center of New York City, so Upper Westchester County.
And how old were you when you did that road trip?
I had just finished just finished school in Morrisville, so I was probably like 19.
And this was a cross country in a van?
No,
You
I
guys-
had a little Corsica, but I was like going and I broke up with the first, girl of my life, and I was like, the world's over. Maybe I won't go to SUNY Plattsburgh, and I'll just go, run away on fish tour. And I went and saw like as many fish shows as you could possibly see. That was probably the most I saw in like one summer. And then once the fish was done for the summer, I was like, well, Ezzo just moved out to Colorado. Maybe I'll go visit him in my car and just kind of like go check out Colorado. And my good friend Angela came with me, and we just drove in my little Corsica across the country. We didn't have much money, so we slept in rest stops in my car and made it out there. He stayed with him, hung out with him for a couple days. We went down to the Grand Canyon, saw the Grand Canyon for the first time. Then we stopped, and I used my birthday gift for my parents on a hotel room because the Devils were in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final and could win the cup. So I asked them to just get me a hotel room in the middle of like nowhere land so I could watch the game. They won the cup, so it was worth it. Totally worth it. And then we cruised back home eventually. Shortly after, I moved out here to go to school, and shortly after, that girl followed me. And then but then I had to leave, so she followed me back. And then slowly I found the different places in New York to become a baker. And as soon as I left that barbecue job, I went to school, and it's like literally the 3 days after school was done, 4 days after I got the graduation slip to school, I was driving back here. So
This place hit you that hard. You knew
oh,
you
I
had to come
knew
back.
I knew I was coming. Yeah, New York is like fast, and the people are wonderful, and they suck. I mean, I love them, but like I could never really, even with my really good friends, like as soon as I went to college the first time in upstate New York and came back, I already kind of like lost my fitting with that like tri-state area city type of. I was like, I'm too slow for you guys. I don't want anything to do with this life, going to the bars is yeah, I'm not a drinker. So like all of that didn't work for me. I was like, I'm gonna go to the land of cannabis and redwoods where hippies belong. And so I knew I wanted to come back. So and I did it. My parents were like, you sure you want to go back? It didn't work last time. I was like, it'll be fine. It's what I'm gonna go for my life. And I've been here for I think this will be 17 years in March.
Had you thought about leaving New York before you found Humboldt?
Like permanently, no, but like when I went to upstate New York to go to school, like I never wanted to go home. And I lived in like cow country. I loved not being in like near the city in near New York. As much as New York City is like, if you want to go see your favorite band, New York City is a great place to go see your favorite band. You want to go eat and have a few days or a week of New York's got it all, or at least it did. I haven't been back since, pandemic, but New York has all the fun things. It's so much fun. But to stay, I mean, because when I was going to move back here, it was either ditch the car, move to the city, and jump into the New York City culinary world like baking scene, or move to California. So I chose California quickly. And it was a good decision.
Never looked back.
No, I don't. I haven't visited home in 8 years now. I need to. Well, I was gonna go the end of this year, but I'm dealing with some like health stuff that's got me slowed down. So as soon as I feel a little bit better, I'll go visit the fam. Yeah,
Yeah, city life is something else.
fast.
Yeah.
People have different focus on what they're living for. I mean, I'm not trying to say I've got a better idea. I probably don't, but I'm simpler than like that. I don't need all of that. Too much for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different way of living.
I'm sure I could have done it. I feel like had I made that different path choice, been a totally different human being right now. 15 years of living in the city would have, if it lasted that long, would have changed me into something else. Who knows what?
Do most people in New York that are around the city, do they stay around the city or do they move
We got both.
upstate more? You've got a mix.
It's a mix. There's the New York City diehards that like never want to leave, and then there's the New York City people that find out once they leave that they don't have to be there anymore. So, but there are definitely those that are like they've just gotten so accustomed, and a lot of them that move will move. A lot of them that move will, if they came to a place desolate like this, would die. It's just not enough. Like that guy one of the dudes that went to me with in Morrisville. He's from downtown Manhattan. He just like could not hack Cowtown. He had to go move back home and be in the city. It was too slow for him. I'm like, oh, I'm surprised you can't like just love the fact that it's quiet. But he grew up with it. I couldn't imagine growing up in New York City. And I say the same thing to kids that grew up here in Arcade. I'm like, I couldn't imagine growing up around here, because this is a weird place to grow up too, especially like pre-legalized cannabis, when it was like a crazy little like industry of, I don't know, what we have here. So I couldn't imagine growing up in that. I love them all, but it's an interesting place to come up as a kid, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated when people come here and they just fall in love with it. Because when you grow up here, you kind of take it for you take advantage of it.
I
'cause
see a
it's
lot
just
of the
what
kids
it
that grew up
is.
here. They're like, "Oh, I hate that." Not hate it, but they're like,
Ready to
the
go.
parts that I came here for, they don't want anything to do. They can't, weed. Who fight weed? I'm like, yeah. Well, everywhere else, like you back where I'm from, like if you get seen with anything, it's like not anymore. But back when I moved here, you can't just smoke weed somewhere. You get in trouble for it. Out here, it's just like you're good. And I knew I smoked. I was just honest with myself. It's something I do. At least if I go there, I won't have trouble with the law as far as like, smoking a little bit of weed. So
Yeah,
I,
which how crazy is it that it's 2022 and that's still federally illegal? I always talk about that whenever it comes up because it just
changing.
yeah,
It's still
but
not quite there, but it certainly seems to be. It's like pretty interesting how it's changing right now. Not necessarily for the better though. It seems pretty corporate. So
I think the county just cut some
a lot of the taxes,
yeah,
right?
some
Like,
tax because they're struggling.
of course they are.
So when you tax the shit out of them, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, what do you do? I
Well,
guess we'll cut some of the taxes.
and well, when all the other wealthy entities were just waiting to jump in on the party because they can afford it, and then all the small people that have been doing it. I mean, I'm happy. People tried getting me into that industry when I moved here. I'm very happy. I didn't even go farther than just playing with scissors on the rare occasion while I had a bakery job. Happy. I'm happy to be a connoisseur and not a worker in that industry.
Yeah, you can enjoy it from a distance. Be like, yeah, I support you guys. I'm not
All
gonna
the
get
way,
into the
dude.
field.
Yeah, I want all the triple A's and all that swag. And you're gonna send it out to the other states or something. Like send it to SoCal.
Yeah. Yeah, how bad is LA right now? I've been hearing that it's rough down there.
Oh yeah.
Post COVID, it's just if it wasn't a shithole before, now it's struggling.
Oh, as far as like
Crime-wise, it's
living.
just
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I don't. I haven't spent any time down. The only I've been down to SoCal once. I've been to wherever they do that festival in Indio. I saw fish out there. Otherwise, I haven't been south of San Francisco very much at all. I just stay here.
This is a good spot to be.
I
It's
know.
a good
I tell
spot
people
to
that
be.
they all think I'm crazy. I'm like, I just stay here. I love it here, dude. This is like the greatest place on earth. So
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for you, man. I'm definitely excited to try some of that bread now.
I'm gonna make it a point to bring you some the next
Yeah.
time I bake.
Yeah,
For sure.
we'll have to do this again. This was a hell of a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Do you want to plug again where people can find you, how they can order bread, where they go?
You could always, I guess, check me out on Instagram. It's Josh Fox _bread _ on Facebook. It's Josh Fox bread. Or if I don't really want to share my phone number, I guess, on here, but
Yeah.
if you go
I
there, my
always-
phone number will be there for you to, if you ever want to like text me or message me, you can certainly hit me up. And it seems complicated to order bread from me, but it is not. It's simply see my order sheet, text me an order, come the next day, pick it up. We'll say hi, we'll say bye. You might get a cookie, and then we move on and we do it again. So, and everybody, even though some people don't know it, anyone that wants to order bread from me is welcome. There's no like signing up or like being part of a club or
no
it's
newsletter that you have to join.
nothing. Anyone, if you could get the message that says text your order to this number and you do it and I have the bread, you're in. That's it.
And order right when it drops because it might sell out.
I highly suggest ordering as quickly as you can and being open to trying different breads because if you're not set on just having one bread, your potential to actually not get shut out and increases. So when you order, say, hey, I want this bread. If you're a pro, you'll order the bread you want or the breads you want. And then if you're a real pro, you'll write, if for some odd reason they aren't available, but these are, I'll take them instead this way. Because if you wait until I tell you they're sold out and then I tell you and you switch your order, the other ones might be gone too. So, but that's getting super pro and technical. So,
Okay, well, Josh, this was awesome. You're awesome. The bread looks great. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
thanks,
I'm
man. Thanks
excited.
for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do this again.
We should.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks.
Bye.